Good eye.
Hello, Penn State fans, and welcome to another episode of Joe and the Fatman. Joe Smeltzer of Nittany Sports Now, joined as always by Kyle Fatman Golik of Nittany Sports Now and Mike Farrell Sports, as well as our producer Jay Holahan, producer and on-air talent Jay Holahan from Mike Farrell Sports. And it's been a pretty busy and productive recruiting month already for Penn State football. It started on the second day of May when Terry Wiggins, a four-star in-state linebacker from Coatesville, announced his commitment. 3 days later, Mafi Lama, another four-star, this one from Manassas, Virginia, another linebacker, he followed suit and announced his commitment. The Friday of that week, another in-state player, Alex Haskell, three-star defensive lineman from Philly St. Joe's Prep, committed to Penn State. About 72 hours after that, Penn State added a four-star receiver in the form of Davion Fat Rat Brown from Richmond, Virginia. 17 players are committed to Penn State's 2026 class. The group ranks fourth for the nation per 24/7 Sports, behind USC, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. Fellas, of the four players Penn State has gotten commits from just this month, which one are you the most excited about?
So the one I'm most excited about, Joe, is Haskell, the kid out of Philadelphia. If I'm reading this right, and where a lot of folks are saying is the upside on him is Mason Graham territory. And if you watch the 2025 NFL draft, Mason Graham went fifth overall in the NFL draft. That's something that got to get you excited. The one thing that I feel we're seeing the momentum on is all the positive momentum with the program. Penn State right now is an it program. It's been a long time since we've been able to say that. I know we've had spurts in the Franklin era when we were the it program, but I don't think we've ever been at this level. And those kids are starting to feel it right now. How can you not be excited to be part of this? And if the Penn State were to go on to another deep playoff run or even win the national championship this year, you're just adding another log to a fire that's already inferno hot. Jay, who do you like?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Terry Wiggins. Number one, he's a local guy by me, so that obviously interests me. But he's an edge rusher. I think it's something that Penn State needs to really continue to put a lot of resources into. 6'3", 210. That's intriguing to me as well. Four-star recruit. I'm excited to see what he can do. I also think he could be a diamond in the rough kind of guy, because you look at who was really after him: Cincinnati, Syracuse, Kentucky, and BC. And Dan Connor obviously being the one that's been recruiting him, according to 24/7 Sports. That obviously raises some eyebrows for me as well. So I'm going to go with Wiggins. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, and it looks pretty good, right? That Penn State will at least have an improved version of its receiving corps in 2025. But until Penn State gets out of the doldrum of having everything on offense but wide receivers, I gotta get excited about receivers coming in, and Brown's a pretty good one. He's got decent size to him, 6'1", 195. He's got about a full year between now until he plays his first college game, way more than a full year actually. So he's got time to bulk up still. And watching the film, reading the scouting reports, he's a good combination of a guy that could get you yards in the screen game and also make those contested combat catches through traffic. So I like this guy a lot. He's got the credentials. He's one of the best players in the state of Virginia, top 10, borderline top 5 player in Virginia. So I like this guy a lot, and I think that's a big get for Marcus Higgins, who has been doing very well both in high school recruiting receivers and in getting players from the transfer portal. But thinking of this class overall, it's a top 5 class. The last time Penn State had anything close to a top 5 class was 2022. Obviously, we know that's the class that brought Penn State Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Zane Durant, Katron Allen, Denai Dennis Sutton, Abdul Carter, KJ Winston. It was just an absurd amount of talent that came in for Penn State, and pretty much every big time player that was expected to pan out did. You had some outliers too. Obviously, Kane Saunders was thought by some to be a star receiver. That hasn't played out yet. Jerry Cross was a promising tight end. He ended up getting lost in the shuffle of great tight ends at Penn State and never really got a chance to do much of anything. And now he's gone into the transfer portal. But that 2022 class was a class the program needed. Remember, this was coming off back-to-back, or not back-to-back 7-6 seasons, but a 4-5 season and a 7-6 season. Penn State went 11-11 over that 2 years run. So Penn State really needed a big-time shot in the arm in recruiting. And the situation's a little different now, right? Penn State isn't just fighting to be relevant again. They're fighting to win a national championship, and many see them as the favorite to win a national championship. But even given the difference of the situations, do you guys feel that this class of 26 could make a similar impact to other great classes like the class of 22 and going way back, that 1991 class that turned into the nucleus of an undefeated team in 1994?
That's and it's hard to say right now, Joe. That 2022 class might be up there with the greatest Penn State classes of all time. I don't have to regurgitate the folks that were in that class. You did that, but those kids are going to probably go down as Penn State immortals. I think we go back to, I believe it was the 2018 class that had Micah Parsons in it, but it also had Ricky Slade and Justin Shorter too. When you look at those, Penn State in a 2018 class essentially had 3 kids that were the best athletes at their positions in the nation that committed to Penn State, and really only one panned out. I mean, Shorter never really materialized even remotely close to being what he was rated, and Slade not even in the vicinity. So that's the danger of kind of going this early is, you had a huge monster class in 22, and you're riding a high, so it's really easy to go on it. But again, in the same vein, look at 2018. We were on that same sugar high, and they didn't even come remotely close to 20 what the 22 class had.
Yeah, I think the 22 class goes down in history, obviously, as one of the greatest ever. But as Kyle just said, you have so many staples that go down as one of the best at their position of all time, 2 of which at one position at running back, which is crazy. But it's good to see. You mentioned Jerry Cross getting lost in the tight end shuffle. I think that also just speaks to how much competition Penn State has at just about all their positions, probably aside from wide receiver, of course, with the talent pool. But I think that's something that James Franklin has done a good job of when he is recruiting. He wants to make sure he's getting the best of the best. And it kind of reminds you of the Miami philosophy, which how they were able to turn players out like it was, nobody's business, or Alabama. And I'm not saying that Penn State is anything like those guys in terms of what's come up, but in terms of just that mindset, I think that's a good thing that Penn State has, because that's what you need to stay relevant nowadays in college football, that and also your NIL money.
And before you jump back into it, Joe, one more point I'd like to make is, and Jay, you brought up there's so much competition at all these positions. You mentioned wide receiver. Here's the one that I'm going to throw out there right now that we still don't have an answer for. And this is going to blow your guys' mind. Are you ready? Quarterback. We don't know who's going to follow Drew Allar. We don't. Prbula's gone. We'll go with who is Allar's coach, Joe? Brad Menard?
Mandler.
Okay. He's praising Peyton Faison, who's in this class a good bit. There's Troy Hune in this class. We're going to be still when Drew came, we knew Drew was going to be it. And one thing that Franklin hasn't been able to prove, and this is no indictment on Trace McSorley or Sean Clifford. They are what I will call the very good college quarterbacks. They're program setters. They're going to do very, very well. But when you're talking differentiators, that is going to take you to the next level when you're talking competing for national championships and all the above, there's yet to be that successor to Drew Allar. And that's the one thing. We're not going to get the answer this year, nor should we. But that's one of the things to keep your mind on, not only for this recruiting class, but also next recruiting cycle, and also with the portal periods. Could Penn State also take a cue from, say, an Oregon? And if there's an experienced starter in the portal, if they don't feel they have the right guy doing that. So again, I don't know. We don't know until we're put in that situation, but until Franklin and his staff can prove that they can get a pipeline of quarterbacks, kind of like how Dabo Swinney at Clemson had. And you look at what Ohio State has obviously done. Like, look at how many most outstanding offensive player of the years that they've had at the quarterback position the last decade at Columbus from that position. Alabama, etc. You got to do quarterback. And that's the one thing they haven't been able to prove. Like, we won't know this year, but that's the one area that I'm always going to be kind of harping on.
Yep, and recruiting season is hardly over yet. In fact, in some ways, it's just beginning. Official visits really started last weekend. They'll be running through to the end of June. Penn State got a few already this weekend, and in fact, the guy they're favored to land per Steve Wiltfong of On Free is Dorian Barney, 4-star blue chip corner from Georgia. Another guy that visited Penn State this weekend was Kerry Adams. He's a guy they've been after for a while from Baltimore, Maryland, the place where Penn State knows how to recruit and do it quite well. But guys, the one everybody wants to know about is Joey O'Brien. He is the number one player in Pennsylvania per 24/7's rankings, the number 4 safety in the country, number 30 player overall in the country. He's a 5-star recruit, and he's a guy that I'm not saying he's going to be the next Travis Hunter, but he does want to play 2 ways in college, and Penn State, at least according to O'Brien, is open to him playing 2 ways in college. He would be a safety and a wide receiver. In his scouting report for 24/7, Andrew Ivins compared him to Justin Simmons of the Broncos, which that's a pretty good NFL talent. And if O'Brien does end up playing receiver too, who knows what type of a game changer this guy could be. He's from Pennsylvania. In fact, he goes to LaSalle College High School, which produced Abdul Carter. And right now, the 2 schools everybody's talking about for O'Brien are Penn State and Notre Dame. There's other schools in the mix: Tennessee, Oregon, Clemson are among them. But O'Brien's Penn State, I don't know if Penn State really has the true can't miss player in 2026 yet. O'Brien could be that guy. What are your guys' thoughts?
I know I'm about to use one of the most overused terms, that we do, is like, this is a must-get prospect for Penn State. And I'm always going to fall back on to the Franklin doctrine he did when he came on board in 2014. You got to dominate the state. And, even if O'Brien goes to Notre Dame or goes to Oregon or goes elsewhere, Penn State, I think, already has wrapped up in the state of Pennsylvania 5 or 6 of the top 10 already. So this would just be complete domination if they can get this 7th kid in the top 10. But it's like when Micah Parsons was recruitment, he was looking at Oklahoma, Ohio State. You have to land these guys. If Penn, the Abdul Carters of the world that fly at a 4-star under the radar and then morph into that, those, they happen, but the elite programs take care of business in their home turf when it matters most. Penn State goes around the country. They're able to raid Maryland, raid New Jersey, pick the couple key kids out of like Georgia, Florida, Texas, California. But you got to get them at home when they're here at home. This is a must get for Franklin and company, because to not get him with all the momentum that Penn State's riding right now it would be a head scratcher.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, how many times have we seen schools come in like Clemson, Ohio State into your backyard and taking kids? I mean, they do it all the time in Philadelphia. They did it with Eddie George back in the day. They did it with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
Eddie George was Penn State's fault. Joe wanted him to play defense.
Well, in defense of Eddie George, Penn State went into Columbus and took Kajana Carter right out of John Cooper's shadows. So it's like,
and they did.
I don't think we would complain too much.
No, but I mean, they came into your state, and it's definitely like kind of a territorial type thing. I wouldn't want to lose like Kyle McCord again, who played at St. Joe's Prep, or Will Howard at Downingtown. So I personally just think that when you have that type of talent, like Kyle said, you want to dominate that in your state. And I know he didn't turn out, but losing Julian Fleming in the state of PA to Ohio State was a slap in the face. Although he didn't turn out, I do know that.
Agree.
Yep. Well, we'll see how the rest of the recruiting plays out. Now, for this cycle, we'll have a lot to talk about with recruiting. That's probably going to be the main focus of our conversations for the next month or so, because let's face it, there's not a ton else going on. But when we come back, we will have segment 2 of Joe and the Fatman, and we'll talk about whether or not Penn State truly is unrivaled. Stay tuned.
I also could have thrown in there Darrell Revis and LaShawn McCoy.
Revis was never going to Penn State at all. That
No.
was back
when Pitt actually gave a shit about the Whippeal.
Correct.
True.
Yeah. Aliquippa was like, if you were an Aliquippa kid, you Penn State was persona non grata, and you either went to Pitt or you went out of state.
Which is the complete opposite of how it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's right. Fisher, Tyke Hayes.
Lamont Wade.
Was that a Clareton?
Yeah. Clareton, yep.
Oh, I thought he was Aliquippa too.
No.
Oh.
Joey Porter Jr. out of North Allegheny. That kid would have either went to Ohio State or Pitt.
Yeah.
Miles Sanders, Woodland Hills. That was.
Yep.
You know what he's happened after Terry Smith joined the staff.
Yeah, I mean, I think isn't Palco still part of Franklin's regime, or did he finally get to West Al?
Yeah, well, he's not coming back to West Al. That bridge is burned, but yeah, he's still there.
That's helping too in the state.
Yeah,
ready to rock, Joe?
Yeah, we're ready. Right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Joe and the Fatman. Joe Smeltzer, Kyle Fatman Golik, Jay Holahan here, and it's May when we're about to talk about this. Who is Penn State's rival? Kyle, you laid out a good column last week about why you feel Pitt is Penn State's rival. I'll give my thoughts on the matter, but first, for not discouraging anybody from reading what you wrote, but you pled your case in print. Now played it on the air. Kyle Golik, why is Pitt Penn State's rival?
It's been Penn State's rival. Here's the thing. Ask a Penn State fan what happens when they lose to Pitt. They're miserable. It is the worst thing in the world. They use the excuse, we don't need them. They're not our rival, and it's all this defense mechanism stuff here. And I'm just going to go here. I'm going to paint the picture I painted in my article. Will Howard was on Football In with Ben Roethlisberger, and he goes, we don't look at Penn State as a rival. I'm willing to bet all those folks out there that listen to this great podcast, and we love you, when Will Howard basically shamed Penn State in that manner, you were upset. You were. Don't lie. It's the truth. Okay? So what you're doing to Pitt is the same thing that Will Howard did to you. This rivalries don't have to be, competitive both ways. The angst from one side can create a rivalry in a chippy atmosphere. Look at the Maryland rivalry. Okay? I know Penn State owns the series 41-3-1 or something obscene like that. But think of that 2014 game. Think about when Penn State lost them, I believe, in 2020. You didn't feel good because you don't lose to Maryland. That's the side of the rivalry. Penn State, okay, so for years, and I'm a firm believer in this, and I will be to the day I die, and you can't change my mind otherwise. When Paterno was doing his all sports conference idea back in the 80s, he had a TV deal set up with CBS, had his all worked out. Pitt was trying to get into the Big East in hoops. And Roy Chipman, who was the Pitt men's basketball coach, torpedoed that idea. So Paterno and Penn State acquiesced and said, hey, can we join the Big East? Well, it was Syracuse and Pitt that put the dagger into that. And that left a lot of hard feelings where Penn State spent the rest of the 80s looking for a conference. They almost landed in the ACC. I can't remember the former ACC commissioner that told the story about this, but you can find it online. It's there. He said it was this close. But the only reason Penn State didn't end up in the ACC was the Big Ten actually called, and where Paterno was with his academics being amongst the public ivies in Penn State's portfolio, it was a no-brainer. So it was always like, okay, now we're in two separate conferences. Well, then we got to have these home game economics. Then it became we need to schedule to protect ourselves. Well, here's the thing. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois last year and ended up in Atlanta for the national championship. Ohio State lost 2 games, including the game itself against the 6-win Michigan team. Do you think that destroyed Ohio State? No, they're upset. They're happy with their national championship, but they're still bitter over that, and they can't take the Michigan Needle. You're telling me, you look at Penn State's schedule this year, the out-of-conference slate, and you tell me you get up for any of these games. Like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be there for Nevada. You're a liar. I'm going to say right now, if you took Nevada off there or Villanova, and I can't remember who else they play.
FIU.
Okay, directional Florida. Okay.
Aren't they dropping down to
probably it's a money game. It's a body bag game
or something.
Okay. So you're telling me as a fan, you want to play FIU, but you don't want to play Pitt. There's something wrong with you if you don't want to see that game. That's a better game on the schedule than playing FIU. I'm sorry. I don't, if I'm covering that game this year, it's going to be like how it was for Kent State. Like, it's name my score, just start writing the cap, and find something to roll on. I'd rather be playing Pitt because I'll tell you what, guys, you were mad in 2016 when Franklin lost that game. You blame Franklin, even though there was rash injuries and Trace had an unfortunate interception at the end. You had him on the hot seat there. You were probably biting your nails in the 2017-2019 games as well, especially the 2019 game where it came down to literally the final Kenny Pickett throw. That's a rival, guys. Clemson can play South Carolina. Miami and Florida, Florida State all play each other. It can work, guys. Oregon and Oregon State play each other. Washington State play each other. We can play Pitt, guys. It's a fun rivalry. I rest my case, Judge Joe Smeltzer.
Joe was at that 2016 game.
I was.
Oh, dude, that game made me sick to my stomach.
Were you on the Fire Franklin bandwagon in the Sands show?
I don't think so.
I don't think anyone was, but the hot seat got hot after that.
Oh, yeah. I remember Barkley had like 4 touchdowns, I think. 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, they're also missing half the defense.
Yeah, because they got hurt in the game. And, if anyone remembers anything, look at how annoyed Trace McSorley was after that game.
When Tony Dorsett
goes, hail to Pitt, hail to Pitt, hail to Pitt. If you're not annoyed by that, then you're just lying to yourself.
There's a song that I think the Penn State band made up that's too grotesque for me to mention, but It is hilarious. And I think it was the following year, the 2017 game. It was on an Instagram page. Yeah, Pitt for sure. If Penn State had joined if the Big East did let them in, that would still be a rivalry being played today, at least in my opinion.
And I'll tell you this: how many of you Penn State fans over the years to your Pitt person to shut them up that you use the Marcus Allen image of him doing his smiley face over the Pitt player? That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and I think Pitt might be the closest thing Penn State has to a rival, but I can't consider it a rivalry if they don't play each other. I just can't.
So you're telling me, okay, when Texas and Texas A&M divorced each other, when Texas A&M ditched the Big 12, went to the SEC, they weren't rivals anymore?
Sure. Because they didn't play. What's your rivalry?
You go to Oklahoma right now. You go to the state of Oklahoma, and you try to tell an Oklahoma fan or an Oklahoma Sooner fan that, they're not rivals. They're going to look at you like you're crazy. I don't understand this elitist behavior of saying you're not a rival. That is nuts. That is asinine. Like, Joe, would you root for Pitt?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a journalist. I don't really root for anybody. So
go take your journalist hat off, and you
all right, Michael K.
Yeah. I'm being Don LaGreca right now. You're being Michael K. And there's Peter over on the side there. I'm never rooting for Pitt. Never, ever, 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 ever. Okay. I know that was my little Mean Girl segment. At the end of the day, this is a game that needs to be played, guys. I look at Penn State and I'm like, you got a beefy enough schedule with the Big Ten. You got to juggle like these opponents over the course of the years. Michigan, Michigan State gets good. Nebraska, if they ever figure it out. Wisconsin, Iowa, Oregon, USC, Washington. You're going to get trust me, you're going to get your Big Ten fill. But that out of conference slate, I'm sorry, you got to put something on there that's gonna be fun and challenge yourself. Throw Pitt on there.
Why does that have to be Pitt? Why can't it be like one of the heavy hitters in a different conference? Like, why can't we
play Alabama? I'd love to play Alabama let's do another 10-year series with the Christmas Tide. Let's get on with Notre Dame. I would enjoy that. But guess what? I'd like to play Pitt too.
But is the joy that Penn State fans get from beating Pitt the same as the joy Pitt fans get from beating Penn State?
Oh yeah.
No.
I can't answer that.
I can tell you it is.
It's not.
100%. 100% it is.
Did any Penn State coach make a keychain of the score after Penn State beat Pitt? No, I don't think that happened. That happened when Pitt beat Penn State.
Again, it's act like, as the Paterno doctrine, act like you've been there before. And James Franklin, you're telling me, Joe, the 2018 Pitt-Penn State game.
Oh, that was fun.
Okay.
Nobody made a keychain that said 51-6.
No one did. But do you think Franklin didn't have any extra motivation and muster going that game? He absolutely did.
2017, there was definitely
why would
motivation.
James Franklin have any beef with Pitt?
2017, there was definitely some muster in there because that was upsetting.
James Franklin referred to them as Akron,
which is similar to things he said about when he was at Vanderbilt going back.
Did he not say that it was Pitt's Super Bowl the year before?
Because it was, and that's my point. Pitt will never be Penn State's Super Bowl.
I mean,
they won't. I agree.
I'll ask you this. We're Maryland's Super Bowl. We're Rutgers' Super Bowl. Hell, Joe, week 1 last year, we were West Virginia's Super Bowl. I mean, Pat McAfee show, literally in the first few minutes live from Morgantown, generated an F Penn State chant. Okay. It's okay. You're a pro wrestling fanatic with me. What does the bad guy do? The bad guy shows up and just pours the icest cold water on the hottest thing out there and just ruins it for everybody and laughs in victory. That's what it is. That's what makes a rivalry for both sides. Penn State fans relish being that guy. They don't have to make the keychain. They don't have to do this. They just know when they show up and they do deliver on what they're expected to do. That is the enjoyment. They don't need the keychain. Pitt needs to make the keychain. Maryland needs to make the keychain. West Virginia needs everything they can.
None of Maryland, Rutgers, or West Virginia are rivals, by the way. None of those three teams are rivals to Penn State.
I mean, when you
so back in the day, West Virginia feels
oh yeah. Oh yeah,
Maryland definitely does. On the field, Maryland does.
Again,
and not in the stands.
They've been for Penn State 3 times. One of them was during COVID when nobody was in the stands.
Well, the Maryland players and the Penn State players, they didn't. They don't get along. I mean, that's been happening for a while.
Mike Locksley has no love for Franklin, and Franklin
lost him by 40.
Let me tell you this: Franklin takes that Maryland game personally because in his mind, he should have been the Maryland head coach.
That's not Penn State, though. That's James Franklin's personal vendetta.
And guess what? That's Penn State, and he exercises that. I mean, that is what it is. Sometimes it's all rivalry takes. It just
you're saying that the Generals and Globetrotters are rivals when you're saying that Penn State and Maryland are.
You go down, like I said.
It's a good point, but
Penn State fans, I mean, we all love Penn State here, and I know we're all journalists too, but we expect to beat Maryland. That's a given.
Which is why it is
on the opposite side of the coin, there's a lot of hate that is fueled with that.
But that's like saying because the Yankees kicked the crap out of the Red Sox for so long, that wasn't a rivalry. But that most definitely was a rivalry.
Correct.
But the Red Sox won some of the time.
But the Yankees beat the Red Sox in every chance they could get. And that was obviously still a rivalry. There was never an upper hand.
The same thing. Maryland is not the Boston Red Sox. The Red Sox won. They made the postseason. They put themselves in position to play big games against the Yankees.
But that's true. But just because you beat the crap out of a team doesn't mean that. And at the very least, it might not be something where the fans view them as rivals, but the players on the field, because they played each other in high school, they hate it. It's chippy. They hate each other.
Players hate everybody that they play against.
Yeah, but it's different between Penn State and Maryland. I mean, how many times has that happened? Those coaches know when they play when those two teams get together, you're taking someone's head off. Nick Scott literally blew up a punt returner just for the sake of it.
And what did the final score of that game end up being?
Well, yeah. That lit a spark. Same with taking out Joey Julius that day.
Yeah, I thought that was Minnesota where that happened.
Every team wanted to take out Joey Julius. I think even Pitt may have even tried. I don't know if they were the first. Michigan did, right?
When you're a kickoff specialist that acts like a superstar, that's going to happen. So
God bless him, Big Joey.
Wonder what he's up to these days.
Maybe we need to have him on the show. Open invite to Joey Julius.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, talk about what it was like to go down and blow up kick returners.
My kind of guy.
Oh, that's going to do it for segment 2 of Joe and the Fat Man. When we come back, we'll have our box of mystery that Fat Man will lead. Stay tuned to Joe and the Fat Man.
That was our best segment ever.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Most controversial segment.
Yep, I'm fine with it.
Joe, you played the perfect contrarian.
Yep. Penn State doesn't even play Maryland this year, do they?
I think they do.
I don't know. Because I know College Park isn't one of the road games.
Oh, no, I think they play Rutgers this year.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not going to that.
Oh, yeah, I'm not either. There's no winning going there. It's like you only lose going out that to Piscataway.
Piscataway.
Yeah, pandemonium.
All
All right,
right,
ready to bring it home?
bring it on
Yep.
home.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the final segment of Joe and the Fatman. Joe Smeltzer, Nittany Sports Now, joined as always by Kyle Fatman Golik of Nittany Sports Now and Mike Farrell Sports, and our producer / on-air talent Jay Holahan of Mike Farrell Sports. It's the box of mystery. For those who don't know, Fatman, fill them in.
It's I just open up my box of mystery. Jay and Joe have zero clue what I'm about to ask them, but they're going to give you their honest responses. It's my random thought of the week. It doesn't necessarily have to be Penn State, but we always try to do something fun here at the end that's engaging. So last week, Joe and I had the pleasure, I guess we can call it a pleasure, of covering the Pitt Penn State game at PNC Park. Penn State got essentially run ruled in the seventh. I think it was 15-1.
Yep.
Yeah. So in the baseball theme of mine, the same day that we're covering that game, Major League Baseball decides, hey, Pete Rose is no longer on the ban list. He essentially did serve his lifetime ban because he's no longer with us and he can't do any of that. So my two-part question with this is, number one, do you think Pete Rose should go into the Hall of Fame? And number two, where do you personally rank Pete Rose amongst the greatest players of all time? Considering with all the tributes that have been going on in Cincinnati, Cincinnati made this claim the other day, calling Pete Rose their Babe Ruth. So keep that in mind as you answer that question.
Was not.
Joe, Jay, you're up.
He's not. Johnny Bench is their Babe Ruth. Come on now.
I'm just telling you what they're saying.
Frank Robinson was a better, but anyway, it's a complicated subject. I think that I understand the school of thought to where what Pete Rose did on the field outweighs whatever happened away from it that might or might not have affected things on the field that ultimately led to his banishment from the game of baseball. That a lot of people think that Pete Rose was too good of a player for that to just be ignored, and he should have been into the Hall of Fame based on that. I get that school of thinking, but the problem is that Pete Rose never learned anything in all his time banned from baseball. First, he lied. Then he decided, I can make money if I write a book and tell the truth. And he only told part of the truth. We'll probably never know how much of the truth Pete Rose admitted in his book and how much, were still lies. And then just the way he treated people after being banned from baseball, and the stuff that may have happened in his baseball career that came to light, most notably a child molestation accusation. If I feel like letting Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame would be implying that he learned his lesson when he never did. So I feel that had Pete Rose been banned from baseball, and the original plan, a lot of people might not notice, the original plan that Bart Giamatti, the commissioner, laid out was that Pete Rose could have been in the Hall of Fame even with him being banned from baseball. He said that the plan was he wanted the writers basically to decide. They wanted Pete Rose's name on the ballot, and Pete Rose still would have been eligible for the Baseball Hall of Fame. But the powers that be at the Hall of Fame, some of the senior writers said, no, we don't want anything to do with him. They didn't even put him on the ballot to give people the option. So I think Pete Rose getting in, say, 1994, which would have been the traditional 5 years, would have sent the message. It's like, okay, you messed up. You may or may not have learned from it, but you were too good of a player to ignore. Here you go. If you let him in 2026, that basically
eligible until 2027.
27. That basically implies that Pete Rose actually learned from the mistakes that he made when there's very little evidence that he did. So I feel that the ship has sailed. But in any case, I think his name should have been on the ballot. That was a mistake by the writers. I think people should have had the option to either vote him in or not vote him in. He should have been given the same treatment as Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, etc. in that regard. And B, this was the most predictable thing ever, right? I think Pete Rose even predicted it that whenever he died, his ban from baseball was going to be lifted, and it was a lifetime ban. So it makes sense in that regard. But why did it take Shoeless Joe Jackson 74 years of being dead to have his lifetime ban lifted?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, A+ player, but an F human being for Pete Rose. That should have been his.
This is a Phillies fan talking.
Yeah, this is. But so my uncle asked him for an autograph at a bar one time, and he basically just was a total jerk to him. It was ridiculous, even though said uncle still values him in the highest regard. But again, his report card as a person should be when he got to the pearly gates was you're an A+ player and an F human being. He's just, I don't know. I mean, it's such a fine line because the very touchy subject that Joe brought up, the child molestation case, I don't know if that was true or not true. Obviously, if it is, then hell no, he shouldn't be in. But
by Pete Rose's own words, it happened 50 years ago, so it shouldn't matter, right?
Exactly. So I can't sit there and wholeheartedly say, yes, this guy should be in for those reasons. If you're taking what he did on the field, of course, but gosh, I mean, if there are so many other players that should be in the Hall of Fame aside from Pete Rose that had to do with the steroids in the 90s and 2000s. I just wish that those guys could be what baseball would have exonerated right now. And why it took Shoeless Joe so long, I have no idea either, Joe. That is the question that everyone wants to plague on the baseball commissioner. I mean, there's so much stuff that Major League Baseball has just screwed up for the last, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 years further.
So before I get into mine, where do you rank Pete Rose all-time baseball players?
Like top 50, maybe.
No, yeah, he's top 50, but I would lean towards top 30. Top 30.
You guys are a lot nicer to him than me. In the ranking, I'll get to that. So I'm going to go the different direction here than you guys a little bit. So you know, if we started to do this moral clause on every single player, there are so many imperfect people. Would you put in someone who's repeatedly cheat on their wife? Probably not. Would you do, someone into drugs, into alcohol abuse? And we can go on and on and on with it. So I try to just keep it to what is on the field. I'm voting for what I can see, what the fans can see, what writers can see, what we all can see, because that's what we can judge. Because people with their own personal demons, look, most of the heroes that we have are, when you start to find out what kind of people they are, you're like, yeah, you're often disappointed. So I try to stay away from that. But getting back to Pete, the ultimate FU baseball can do is put him in the Hall of Fame and literally say on his placard that he was banned for life for gambling. Yeah. That is the ultimate FU, because they not only upheld the lifetime ban, they elected him then immediately, like if the Baseball Writers of America and then whatever that panel consists of managers, coaches, players, etc. If the ultimate message is you put on there, you elect Pete Rose, and then you've got to put on there, that is the ultimate FU back to Pete, because he didn't get to enjoy the day. He couldn't monetize the day. And then he has to live forever with that as his epitaph, is you gambled and were banned for life. Joe Jackson should have not had to have gone through what he did. Again, I agree with you guys 1,000%. It's baseball's inconsistencies that blow my mind. I'm kind of glad that Rob Manfred, while he's done a lot of wild things, he's at least trying to clean the slate a little bit here, so that way baseball can operate beyond this. But Shoeless Joe Jackson should go in, and it should say the same thing. It's not that I have this, like Pete Rose is, and I'm just going to explain this to people. Pete Rose is one of my favorite players of all time. But I'm also one of those guys that, halls of fame are museums at the end of the day. Look, as a player, you would be steadfast to tell me that, if you watched Pete Rose in his prime, in absolute big moment, and this is how I try to analogize this for people who never saw Pete Rose. Pete Rose on the baseball field was like a versatile Derek Jeter. And like, you look at their numbers and you're not overwhelmed with it. So I'm just going to read this off here because I saw this the other day and this just made me go, interesting. So Pete Rose is 180th all-time in career batting average, 228th all-time in on-base percentage, 464th all-time in OPS plus, and is just over 1,000. He's 1,001 all-time in slugging percentage. So what does that tell? It's like Derek Jeter. You're not going to get the flash. You're not going to get the sexy numbers. It just, when you watch a game, he's going to make the handful of plays at the biggest moments and win you the game. And that's ultimately what it's all about, is winning the game. And Pete Rose did it as good as anybody. But you can't, when you do something that messes with the integrity of the game, and that's what gambling does, is, look, if you're a player and you're betting on, even if you're betting on, or a manager, if you're betting on even your team to win, like, it only takes you that one time to know, hey, this team is effing awful today. I need to put a C note down on this team, on my team, drop it. That's when
he definitely manipulated his pitching rotation based on the bets too.
Correct. So when you mess with the integrity of the game, because it doesn't matter the sport, guys. When we all sit down, whether we're watching as fans or being as writers, we're hoping that there is a purity of what we're watching. We have two sides, whether it's individuals or teams, that are competing to win something, whether it's that game or whether it's a championship or something. We don't need to know that anything needs fixed. So when you mess with the integrity, you got to live with the ultimate sin that you made, that you gambled on the sport. Now, I will end my little thing with, I will not have Pete Rose in my top 50, and I love Pete Rose, ultimate gamer, all this and all that. But it's like this. I'll tell people, well, tell me your top 10 second baseman. Tell me your top 10 third baseman. Tell me your top 10 left fielders or right fielders or center fielders. These are all positions Pete Rose played, even at first base as well. You're not going to have Pete Rose in your top 10 in either of those. So how can you take where there's 9 positions, and really if you include the DH, the closers, and relief pitchers roles that have now elevated in the game, and like I said, I don't think our generation's going to ever rate a closer or a relief pitcher or a DH in the top 50 ever. I think maybe 50 to 100 years from now, there will be, but you got 9 or 10 positions there. How can you have just logically a guy that can't make the top 10 of any of those positions that I named you be in your top 50? I have him in my top 75. I think that's fair. I know Sporting News, when they did their century team at the end of the 20th century, had him number 25. Maybe, I watched a lot of people.
He was on that team and Barry Bonds wasn't, so think about that.
Correct.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like I always will tell people, we all have our opinions, we all have our different metrics, but hopefully at least mine makes sense. And it pains me to knock on a WWE Hall of Famer, but should also be an MLB Hall of Famer as well.
Yep. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of Joe and the Fat Man. For Kyle Fatman Golik, Jay Holahan, I'm Joe Smeltzer, and we are signing off. We'll see you next week for another Joe and the Fat Man extravaganza.
Good night, Canada.